The darkness of space stretched endlessly beyond the orbit of Neptune, cold and silent and full of secrets. Hidden within that darkness, three massive ships hung motionless like predators waiting in tall grass. Their hulls were black as midnight, smooth and curved like the shells of ancient beetles. No lights blinked on their surfaces. No signals escaped their walls. They had been watching Earth for 47 years, and in all that time, not a single human had suspected their presence. Commanderin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, his four luminescent eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. The image showed a small blue planet spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. Earth, home to nearly 10 billion humans, a world of water and green land and swirling white clouds. It looked peaceful from this distance. It looked weak. "Report," and commanded, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the chamber. His science officer stepped forward. Her name was Ra, and she had spent the last 3 decades studying human biology, culture, and technology. Her chitinous body clicked softly as she moved, her mandibles opening and closing in the equivalent of a thoughtful expression. "The humans remain unaware of our presence, Commander. Their detection technology is primitive. Their fastest ships would take months to reach our position. They pose no threat to our observation." "And their species, what have you learned?" Ra activated a secondary display. Images of humans appeared going about their daily lives, working in offices, walking through crowded streets, playing with their children, sleeping in soft beds. They looked so fragile, these creatures, so terribly breakable. "They are unremarkable in almost every way," Ra reported. "Their bodies are soft, covered only in thin skin that provides no protection against weapons or environmental hazards. They have no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, no venom or poison glands. Their teeth are flat and useless for combat. They cannot see in darkness, cannot hear frequencies beyond a narrow range, cannot detect electrical fields or magnetic patterns." Weaknesses upon weaknesses, and observed, continue. "There are short, most live fewer than 100 of their years. They require constant intake of oxygen and will die within minutes without it. They cannot survive temperature extremes that other species would find merely uncomfortable. They need regular sleep, regular food, regular water. Their bodies break easily. Their bones snap. Their organs rupture. They bleed from the smallest wounds." And made a sound of satisfaction. They had conquered 37 star systems over the course of their long history. They had faced species with powerful telepathy, species with bodies of living metal, species that could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. All had fallen before the might of the hegemony. These humans would be no different. "What of their military capabilities?" he asked. "Primitive but improving. They have developed nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own cities. Their space vessels are slow and poorly armed. They have no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, no artificial gravity. Their soldiers carry chemical projectile weapons that would barely scratch armor." "Then they present no challenge." "None whatsoever, Commander. I recommend we proceed with standard subjugation protocols. Within one rotation of their moon, Earth can be brought under hegemony control with minimal loss of resources." And considered this. They were not cruel by nature. They did not destroy species for pleasure. They simply recognized the natural order of the universe. The strong ruled. The weak served. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. Humans would learn their place just as dozens of other species had learned before them. "Very well," he said. "Prepare for first contact. We will give them the opportunity to submit peacefully before we demonstrate our power." The bridge crew moved to obey, their movements precise and coordinated. They shared a partial hive mind, allowing them to work together with perfect efficiency. Each warrior knew exactly what the others were thinking, what they were planning, what they needed. It made them unstoppable in battle. No enemy could match their coordination. As the ships began to power up their systems, a small alert appeared on one of the sensor displays. A human vessel had detected an anomaly in their vicinity. It was a research ship, tiny compared to the warships, carrying a crew of only 23 individuals. It was called the Wanderer, and it was slowly changing course to investigate the strange readings. "Should we destroy it?" asked the weapons officer, and watched the little ship approach on the display. It moved so slowly, like a small animal wandering toward a sleeping predator. There was something almost endearing about its bravery, or perhaps its stupidity. "No," he decided. "Let them come. Let them see us. It is time for humanity to learn that they are not alone in the universe, and that the universe is not kind to the weak." The Wanderer continued its approach, completely unaware of what awaited it. On board that small ship, a woman named Murphy sat in the captain's chair, studying the strange readings on her console. She had brown hair tied back in a practical knot, and her gray eyes were calm and focused. She had been exploring space for 15 years, and she had learned to trust her instincts. Right now, her instincts were telling her that something very important was about to happen. "Captain," her sensor officer reported, "the anomaly is resolving. It appears to be artificial. 3 objects, each approximately 2 kilometers in length." Leaned forward slightly. "Ships. Unknown design, but yes, almost certainly ships." The bridge fell silent. Every member of the crew understood what this meant. They were not alone. Humanity was not alone. Somewhere out there in the darkness, another species had built vessels and crossed the void between stars. This was the moment their entire species had been waiting for, dreaming about, fearing and hopping for in equal measure. "Open a channel," ordered. Her voice did not shake. Her hands did not tremble. "All frequencies. Translate into as many languages as we can manage. Mathematics, binary, everything we have." "Channel open, Captain." Took a slow breath. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, about her parents, about every human being who had ever lived and died, wondering if there was anyone else out there. And then she spoke. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Murphy of the Earthship Wanderer. We come in peace and wish to establish communication. Please respond." On the bridge of the warship, and listened to the translation of her words. Peace. Such a strange concept. The strong did not ask for peace. The strong took what they wanted. But he found himself curious about this creature who faced the unknown with such composure. Most species panicked when they first encountered the Most species ran or begged or made desperate attempts to fight. This human did none of those things. She simply spoke, calm and clear, and waited for a response. It was probably just ignorance, and decided. She did not yet understand what she was facing. Once she saw the true power of she would learn fear like all the others. He gave the order to reveal themselves. The 3 warships powered up their external lights, becoming visible against the stars like 3 massive obsidian monuments. They dwarfed the little human vessel completely. Any reasonable creature would have fled at the sight. The Wanderer held its position, and Murphy, looking at the massive alien ships on her, simply raised one eyebrow and waited for them to respond. The news of first contact spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours, every news channel on the planet was broadcasting the same images. 3 massive alien ships hanging in space beyond Neptune. A small research vessel holding position before them like a mouse standing before 3 elephants. And a woman named Murphy speaking calmly to beings from another world. The governments of Earth held emergency meetings. Military forces went on high alert. Religious leaders called for prayer. Scientists wept with joy and fear in equal measure. Children pointed at the sky and asked their parents if the aliens were friendly. No one knew the answer. They did not attack. They did not immediately respond to this message. Instead, they waited and watched, observing how humanity reacted to their presence, and found the response interesting. These creatures did not collapse into chaos as so many others had. They were afraid, certainly, but they also organized. They communicated. They prepared. After 3 days of silence, they finally responded. Their message was simple and direct. They demanded that humanity send representatives to a neutral location in space. There, the future of the human species would be decided. Earth had 14 days to comply. The Galactic Council had already been informed of the situation. This was standard procedure when they claimed a new species. The Council would witness the subjugation, record it for their archives, and officially recognize authority over the conquered world. It was a formality, nothing more. The outcome was never in doubt. The meeting would take place on Axis Prime, a massive space station built in the darkness between three dying stars. It was neutral territory, owned by no species, governed by council law. Thousands of alien beings lived and worked there, representing dozens of different civilizations. It was, in many ways, the capital of the known galaxy. Humanity had never seen such a place. They had never traveled beyond their own solar system. They had never met any species other than and now they were expected to send representatives into the heart of galactic civilization, alone and unprepared, to face judgment. They chose their delegation carefully. 5 humans would speak for the entire species. They were selected not for their political power or military rank, but for their ability to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly, to represent the best of what humanity could be. Daniel Cole led the delegation. He was 53 years old, tall and lean, with salt and pepper hair and deep brown eyes that seemed to see everything. He had spent 30 years as a diplomat, resolving conflicts between nations, negotiating peace treaties, finding common ground between enemies. He had never failed. He did not intend to start now. Beside him stood Dr. Lisa Grant, the foremost on Earth. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, studying the possibility of alien life, developing theories about how first contact might unfold. She had sharp features and an even sharper mind, and she absorbed information like a sponge absorbs water. The 3 military advisors rounded out the group. Was a veteran of 3 wars, a quiet man with steady hands and absolutely no fear. Was a strategist, someone who could see patterns in chaos and find solutions to impossible problems. Samuel was the youngest of the group, but he had already earned a reputation for creative thinking and unshakable loyalty. Their ship was small compared to the alien vessels they had seen, but it was the best humanity had to offer. It carried advanced communication equipment, the most sophisticated computers Earth could build, and enough supplies to last for months. The journey to Axis Prime would take time, even with the navigation data they had provided. As they left Earth's orbit, Daniel stood at the observation window and watched his home world grow smaller behind them. Blue and green and white, beautiful and fragile, spinning alone in the darkness. 10 billion people were counting on him. 10 billion people who might never see their children grow up, might never feel the sun on their faces again, might never know peace or freedom or hope, depending on what happened in the days ahead. He had never carried such weight before, but his face showed nothing. His hands remained still at his sides. He had learned long ago that fear was a choice, and he chose not to make it. The journey took 11 days. During that time, the delegation studied everything they knew about and the Galactic Council. Lisa shared her theories about alien psychology, about what might motivate species so different from humanity, and developed contingency plans for various scenarios. Samuel monitored communications and gathered intelligence. Daniel spent hours in quiet thought, preparing himself for what lay ahead. When they finally arrived at Axis Prime, the sight took their breath away. The station was enormous, larger than any structure humanity had ever built. It stretched across the void like a city made of light and metal, its spires reaching toward the distant stars, its docks filled with ships of every size and shape imaginable. Vessels that looked like living creatures swam through space beside geometric shapes that understanding. Colors that human eyes had never seen painted the hull of ships from distant worlds. And everywhere there were aliens, beings of every form and nature, creatures with tentacles and wings and crystalline bodies, entities that existed as clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields, things that crawled and things that floated and things that seemed to exist in more dimensions than three. "Remember," Daniel said quietly to his team as they prepared to dock, "we are not here to show fear. We are here to show them who we are." The docking bay was crowded with observers. Word had spread quickly that a new species was arriving, one that they had marked for subjugation. Such events always drew attention. There was something fascinating about watching a civilization meet its end. The airlock opened, and the 5 humans stepped out onto the deck. Silence fell across the bay. Thousands of alien eyes, in every configuration imaginable, turned to stare at the newcomers. The humans were small compared to most of the beings around them. They were soft and fragile-looking, with their exposed skin and their simple clothing. They carried no visible weapons. They had no natural armor, no impressive physical features, nothing to suggest they were anything other than exactly what they appeared to be. Easy prey. But something about the way they walked made some of the observers pause. These humans did not shuffle with fear. They did not huddle together for protection. They walked with their heads high, their eyes forward, their steps steady and sure. Daniel led the way, his expression calm and pleasant, as if he were arriving at a dinner party rather than his species' judgment. The delegation watched from an elevated platform and studied the humans with growing interest. He had seen many species arrive at Axis Prime for the first time. Most were overwhelmed. Most showed clear signs of terror. Most had already accepted their fate before the first word was spoken. These humans showed none of that. If anything, they looked curious, interested, as if this massive station full of advanced alien beings was simply an interesting puzzle to be understood rather than an overwhelming force to be feared. "Curious," Ra observed from beside him. "Their physiological indicators suggest elevated stress, yet their behavior shows no sign of it." "They are pretending," and replied, "putting on a brave face for their audience. It will not last." But as Daniel Cole looked up at the commander and offered a polite nod of acknowledgement, completely unfazed by the massive alien's intimidating appearance, and felt the first small seed of doubt take root in his mind. Perhaps these humans were more interesting than he had initially believed. Perhaps this subjugation would not be quite as simple as he had expected. The great amphitheater of Axis Prime was a wonder of engineering that had taken 300 years to complete. Its curved walls rose toward a transparent dome that showed the endless stars above. Seating was arranged in tiers, each level designed to accommodate different species with different physical needs. Some sections were filled with water for aquatic beings. Others maintained specific temperatures or atmospheric compositions. A few contained nothing but empty space, where beings of pure energy or thought could exist comfortably. 42 species had sent representatives to witness the proceedings. They sat in their designated areas, watching and waiting, communicating in languages that humanity had never heard. Some had been part of the council for thousands of years. Others were relative newcomers, having joined within the last few centuries. All understood the purpose of this gathering. A new species was about to be claimed, and they were here to watch it happen. The delegation occupied the highest tier, looking down upon the chamber like predators surveying their territory, and sat in the central position, his 4 eyes glowing softly in the dim light. His officers flanked him on either side, their massive forms casting long shadows across the seats behind them. They looked supremely confident, completely at ease. This was a familiar ritual for them. They had performed it many times before. The human delegation was escorted to the lowest level, the position traditionally reserved for the weakest species in attendance. It was meant to be humiliating, a reminder of their place in the natural order. Daniel Cole accepted the seating assignment without complaint, settling into his chair as if it were the most comfortable seat in the house. The council speaker opened the proceedings. She was a being called ancient and wise, her body a constantly shifting pattern of light and shadow that was difficult to look at directly. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. We gather today to witness the formal declaration of the hegemony regarding the species known as humanity. As is tradition, the claimant species will state their intentions, and the claimed species will be given the opportunity to respond. Let the record show that this gathering is held in accordance with all established protocols. And rose to his full height, nearly 9 feet of armored muscle and predatory grace. He looked down at the humans far below, and his mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. The hegemony claims dominion over the species known as humanity and their home world of Earth. We do this not out of cruelty, but out of natural law. The strong guide the weak. The powerful protect the helpless. Humanity is young and fragile, unable to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy. Under protection, they will survive. Without it, they will surely perish. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. Many of the watching species nodded in agreement. This was how things worked. This was how things had always worked. The strong took responsibility for the weak, and the weak learned to accept their place. We offer humanity a choice, and continued. Submit peacefully and your species will be preserved. Your culture will continue under guidance. Your people will live and work and raise their children, safe beneath the protection of the hegemony. Resist, and you will be conquered by force. Your cities will burn. Your population will be reduced to a manageable number. Your world will become a reminder to others of the cost of defiance. He sat back down, clearly expecting immediate surrender. It was the only logical response. Humanity had nothing to gain from resistance and everything to lose. Daniel Cole stood slowly. He was small compared to most beings in the chamber. His soft human body and ordinary clothing made him look almost childlike among the giants and wonders surrounding him. But when he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the amphitheater, calm and steady and utterly unafraid. We respectfully decline. A ripple of surprise passed through the assembly. The delegation exchanged glances of disbelief. Even seemed taken aback, her shifting form pausing for a moment before resuming its constant motion. And leaned forward, his eyes blazing brighter. You decline. Perhaps you did not understand my words, little human. We are offering you a chance to survive. We are being generous. We could simply destroy your world without warning, without negotiation, without giving you any opportunity to save yourselves. We understood perfectly, Daniel replied, and we still decline. Do you know what we are? Do you know how many species have fallen before us? We have conquered civilizations that possess technology your world will not develop for. We have crushed empires that span dozens of star systems. Your species is alone, isolated, primitive. You have no allies, no advanced weapons, no way to resist us. You are nothing. Daniel waited until he finished speaking. Then he smiled slightly, the expression warm but not mocking. Commander, may I share something with this assembly? Some information about my species that might help you understand our position. And waved a clawed hand dismissively. Speak your final words, human. They will change nothing. Daniel nodded too, who activated a portable holographic projector. Images began to appear in the center of the chamber, visible from every angle. The first image showed a group of early humans, nearly naked, carrying primitive spears. They were chasing a massive woolly mammoth across a frozen landscape. The mammoth was huge, dangerous, capable of killing any of them with a single blow. But they did not stop. They ran after it for hours, then days, never letting it rest, never giving it a moment of peace. Eventually, the mammoth collapsed from exhaustion and the humans brought it down. My species evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us, Daniel began. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. We were slower than most predators, weaker than most prey animals. By every measure, we should have gone extinct millions of years ago. The image changed to show humans crossing a frozen wasteland, wrapped in animal skins, pushing through blizzards that would kill most species in hours. But we did not die. We survived ice ages that froze much of our planet. We adapted. We made clothing from the bodies of animals. We built shelters from whatever materials we could find. We learned to make fire to cook our food, to preserve our meat for long journeys. The cold could not kill us. More images followed. Humans building the pyramids of Egypt, sailing across vast oceans in wooden ships, fighting wars with swords and shields, surviving plagues that killed millions, climbing mountains that had no oxygen at their peaks, diving into the depths of the ocean where the pressure would crush most creatures. We call ourselves persistence predators, Daniel continued. We do not kill with speed or strength. We kill with patience. We chase our prey until it cannot run anymore. We follow it across any terrain, through any weather, for as long as it takes. Our ancestors would pursue animals for days, running slowly but steadily until the animal's heart gave out from exhaustion. That is what we are. That is what we have always been. The final images showed humans reaching for the stars, rockets launching from Earth, astronauts walking on the moon, probes traveling to the outer edges of the solar system. We are not fragile, Commander. We are adaptable. We have survived asteroid impacts that wiped out other species. We have survived diseases that killed half our population. We have survived wars and famines and natural disasters that would have ended any species with less determination. We do not know how to give up. We do not know how to surrender. It is simply not in our nature. Daniel turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly rather than just the. You look at us and see weakness. You see soft skin and short and primitive technology. But what you should see is a species that has overcome every obstacle ever placed in its path. We did not survive by being strong. We survived by refusing to die. He turned back to En, meeting those four glowing eyes without flinching. So I say again, with all respect, we decline your offer. We will not submit. We will not surrender. And if you choose to fight us, you will learn the same lesson every predator that ever faced our ancestors learned. We are not prey. We have never been prey. And anyone who treats us as such will discover their mistake. The chamber was completely silent. Every being present sat frozen, staring at this small, soft, seemingly helpless creature who had just challenged the most feared warriors in the galaxy. And for the first time in his very long life, and felt something he had never expected to feel when looking at prey. He felt uncertain. They did not accept words as proof of anything. They were warriors, not philosophers. Pretty speeches and historical images meant nothing compared to actual demonstration of capability. So when Daniel Cole finished speaking and rose from his seat and made a demand that silenced any whispers in the chamber. "Prove it," he said simply. "Show us this persistence you speak of. Show us this refusal to die. Face one of our warriors in a survival challenge and let us see if your species is truly as remarkable as you claim." Daniel had expected this. Lisa had warned him that the culture valued action above all else. They would not believe anything unless they could see it with their own eyes. "We accept," Daniel replied without hesitation. "Name your terms." The terms were brutal. The challenge would take place on a barren moon in an uninhabited system, far from any help or interference. The environment was extreme even by galactic standards. Surface temperatures ranged from boiling hot during the day to deadly cold at night. The atmosphere was thin and poisonous. Radiation bombarded the ground constantly. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there for long. They would send one warrior. The humans would send one champion. For 3 standard days they would hunt and the human would evade. If the human survived, the claim would be withdrawn. If the human died, Earth would submit without further resistance. The humans were given 1 week to choose their champion and prepare. Representatives from every council species would observe from ships in orbit, their sensors recording everything that happened on the surface. There would be no cheating, no outside interference, no way to fake the results. When the human delegation returned to their ship, the other four turned to Daniel with concern in their eyes. "Who do we send?" asked quietly. "This is not a fight, it is a hunt. Whoever goes down there will be facing a warrior in terrain that wants to kill them almost as much as the alien does." Daniel had already been thinking about this. He had reviewed the files of every human who might be suitable, every soldier and survivor and specialist who had the skills needed to stay alive in such conditions. And one name kept coming back to him, one person who fit the requirements perfectly. "Maria Santos," he said, "she is our best chance." Maria Santos was not famous. She was not a soldier or a scientist or a politician. She was a survival instructor who had spent her life teaching others how to stay alive in the worst conditions Earth had to offer. She had crossed deserts alone. She had survived for weeks in frozen wilderness with nothing but a knife. She had been lost at sea, trapped in caves, stranded in jungles. Every time she had found a way to survive. More importantly, she had the right mindset. She did not panic. She did not give up. She assessed her situation, made a plan, and executed it with calm determination. She was exactly what humanity needed. Maria arrived at Axis Prime 3 days before the challenge. She was a small woman, 5 feet 4 inches tall, with dark hair cut short and brown eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death many times and walked away each time. The champion was named Eth. He was a legend among his people, a warrior who had killed over 300 enemies in personal combat. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his black exoskeleton covered in scars that marked his victories. His 4 arms ended in claws that could cut through steel. His eyes glowed with predatory hunger. When the two champions met before the challenge, Eth looked down at Maria with obvious contempt. "This is what your species sends against me, this tiny thing." Maria looked up at him calmly. "I guess we will find out." The challenge began at dawn on the barren moon. Maria was given a head start of 4 hours, enough time to study the terrain and find initial shelter. She was allowed to bring basic survival gear but no weapons, no communication devices, nothing that could harm them directly. Eth would carry only his natural armaments, no energy weapons or advanced technology. The observers in orbit watched as Maria descended to the surface. The environment was even worse than the reports had suggested. The air was so thin that every breath was a struggle. The radiation was intense enough to cause burns within hours of exposure. The ground was covered in sharp rocks and unstable formations that could collapse at any moment. Maria spent her first hour simply observing. She noted where the shadows fell, how the temperature changed, where water might collect in the brief hours of darkness. She identified several cave systems that might provide shelter. She studied the mineral content of the rocks around her, looking for anything useful. When Eth began his hunt, he moved with terrifying speed. His body was perfectly adapted for harsh environments. The radiation did not bother him. The thin air was more than enough for his efficient respiratory system. He covered vast distances in minutes, following the faint traces Maria had left behind. By the end of the first day, he had found her trail. He followed it eagerly, certain that the tiny human would be easy prey. Instead, he found a trap. The ground beneath his feet gave way, dropping him into a pit filled with sharp rocks that Maria had arranged to maximize damage. The fall did not kill him, but it injured one of his legs and slowed his pursuit. Maria had not simply run, she had prepared. The second day was worse for Eth. Maria had spent the night setting up additional traps throughout the area, rockfalls triggered by tripwires, pools of acidic water that she had detected through careful observation and he had blundered into blindly, false trails that led nowhere, wasting his time and energy. She never attacked him directly, she never tried to fight. She simply made his life miserable at every turn. Every time he thought he had her cornered, she slipped away. Every time he found her trail, it led to another trap. She was always one step ahead, always thinking, always planning. The observers watched in growing amazement. This tiny human was not running in blind panic. She was systematically wearing down one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. She was using the environment against him, turning his strengths into weaknesses. She was hunting the hunter. By the third day, Eth was exhausted. His injuries had accumulated. His body, designed for short bursts of intense activity, was not meant for prolonged pursuit. He had barely slept, constantly searching for his prey, constantly triggering her traps, constantly failing to catch her. Maria, meanwhile, had paced herself. She had rested when she could. She had eaten insects and grubs that she had found beneath rocks. She had collected water from condensation during the cold nights. She was tired and sore and covered in minor injuries, but she was still functional. She was still surviving. When the time limit expired, Maria emerged from her hiding place and walked calmly to the designated extraction point. She arrived exactly on schedule, dirty and exhausted, but very much alive. Eth did not make it. His body was found halfway between his last known position and the extraction point. He had collapsed from exhaustion, his legendary endurance finally failing him. He was still alive, but barely. His body had simply given out. The observers in orbit sat in stunned silence. They had expected to watch a small, soft human die quickly at the claws of a champion. Instead, they had witnessed something that should have been impossible. A human woman, with no weapons and no armor, had defeated the most feared warrior that had ever produced. She had not done it through strength or speed or superior technology. She had done it through patience, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to give up. In the observation ship, and watched the recording of Eth's collapse over and over again. He watched Maria walk to the extraction point with calm, steady steps. He watched her look up at the sky, knowing that millions of alien eyes were watching her, and simply nod once before boarding the shuttle that would take her back to the station. He had never felt fear before. He had never known what it was like to face a predator more dangerous than himself. But as he watched that small human woman walk away from his fallen champion, and finally understood what every prey animal in the galaxy had always known. Some things were more dangerous than they appeared. And humanity was the most dangerous thing he had ever encountered. The aftermath of the challenge changed everything. News of what had happened spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species that had ever feared every civilization that had submitted to their dominance, every world that had been conquered and absorbed into the hegemony, they all heard the same incredible story. A human woman, small and soft and apparently helpless, had defeated a champion through nothing but patience and determination. The council reconvened 3 days after Maria's victory. The atmosphere in the great amphitheater was completely different this time. Species that had previously ignored the human delegation now watched them with respect and curiosity. Observers who had expected to witness a subjugation whispered among themselves about what they had seen. The delegation, still seated in the highest tier, looked diminished somehow, their confidence shaken in a way that no military defeat had ever managed. When the human delegation entered the chamber, they were not escorted to the lowest level. Instead, they were led to a position of honor near the center of the amphitheater, surrounded by representatives of the most respected civilizations in the galaxy. Daniel Cole accepted the new seating with the same calm composure he had shown throughout the proceedings. If he felt any triumph, he did not show it. Maria Santos walked beside him, still bearing the marks of her ordeal. She had refused medical treatment until after the council meeting, saying that she wanted the observers to see exactly what survival looked like. Bruises covered her arms and face. Her hands were cut and scraped. She moved with a slight limp from a twisted ankle, but her eyes were clear and alert, and she held her head high. The council speaker opened the session with unusual formality. "The challenge has been completed," she announced, her shifting form moving more slowly than usual, as if she was choosing her words with great care. The terms were clear. The human champion has survived. The claim to dominion over humanity is hereby withdrawn. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. Several species that had been allied with the began to distance themselves, their representatives making subtle gestures of respect toward the human delegation. And rose from his seat. His movements were slower than before, his four eyes dimmer. He looked like a commander who had just lost his first battle after a lifetime of victories. "I request a private meeting with the human ambassador," he said. "There are matters I wish to discuss." Daniel considered the request for a moment, then nodded. "I accept." They met in a small chamber overlooking the stars, just the two of them, and had removed his ceremonial armor, appearing in his natural form without any of the symbols of his rank and power. It was a remarkable gesture for an admission of vulnerability that his species almost never showed. "How?" and asked simply, his voice stripped of its usual commanding tone. "How is this possible? Eth was the finest warrior my species has produced in generations. He was faster, stronger, more experienced. He should have killed your champion within hours." Daniel walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. So many of them, scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet. So many worlds, so many possibilities, so much still to discover. "Commander, do you know how humans evolved?" he asked quietly. "Your science officer provided extensive briefings. You developed on a harsh world, adapted to survive extreme conditions. That is part of it, but there is something more fundamental, something that even your briefings did not capture." Daniel turned to face the. "We were never the strongest creatures on our world. We were never the fastest or the most dangerous. There were predators that could kill us with a single bite, animals that could crush us with a single blow. By any rational measure, we should have been prey. Yet you survived." "We did more than survive. We became the dominant species on our planet, and eventually we reached for the stars. Do you know why?" And was silent, waiting. "Because we are stubborn," Daniel said with a slight smile. "Impossibly, irrationally stubborn. We simply refuse to accept defeat. When something tries to kill us, we find a way to survive. When something threatens our existence, we adapt and overcome. When everyone tells us something is impossible, we do it anyway. It is not intelligence that sets us apart, though we have that. It is not technology, though we develop that too. It is something deeper, something in our very nature. We do not know how to give up." He paused, letting the words settle. "Maria did not defeat Eth because she was stronger. She defeated him because she refused to die. She turned every disadvantage into an advantage. She used the environment, used her intelligence, used the one thing she had that he did not, patience. She simply outlasted him. That is what humans do. We outlast everything." And was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that no commander had done in 10,000 years of recorded history. He bowed his head in acknowledgement of an equal. "I understand now," he said slowly. "You are not prey. You have never been prey. You are something else entirely, something we have never encountered before." "We are survivors," Daniel replied, "and we would rather make friends than enemies. We did not come to the stars to conquer anyone. We came to find our place in the galaxy, to learn, to grow, to meet other species and share what we have learned. We would welcome thee as allies rather than masters." "Allies?" and repeated as if the word was foreign to him. "They have never had allies, only subjects and enemies. Perhaps it is time for something new." The two of them stood in silence, looking out at the stars together. Two species, so different in form and nature, finding common ground in the vast darkness of space. It was the beginning of something unprecedented, something that would reshape the galaxy in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Within one standard year, humanity had been granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Their representatives sat among the most ancient and respected civilizations, their voices heard and their opinions valued. Species that had dismissed them as primitive now sought trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Scientists from across the galaxy traveled to Earth to study these remarkable creatures who had conquered their own hostile world through sheer determination. Within 5 years, humanity had become one of the most influential voices in galactic politics. They served as mediators in disputes that had lasted centuries. They developed new technologies by combining their own innovations with knowledge from dozens of other civilizations. They explored the cosmos with the same relentless curiosity that had once driven them across their own world. And though, for the first time in their long history, sought an alliance rather than demanding submission, and himself became the ambassador to Earth, spending years learning about human culture and history. He came to respect these strange, soft creatures who had taught his species such a valuable lesson. The galaxy had learned something important. When humans walked into a room, the smart response was not to bare your fangs or prepare for conquest. It was to pull up a chair, offer a drink, and listen to what they had to say. Because the species that had chased mammoths across frozen plains, that had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters, that had refused to die no matter what the universe threw at them, was not going anywhere. On a small blue world orbiting an ordinary yellow star, Murphy received the news of the alliance with the. She smiled as she watched her daughter playing in the garden, chasing butterflies through the summer grass. The galaxy had opened up for humanity, full of wonders and dangers and possibilities beyond imagining. And her little girl would grow up in a universe that knew what humans were truly capable of. They were no longer alone. They had found their place among the stars, and the future stretched out before them, bright and promising and full of hope. Maria Santos never sought fame or recognition for what she had done. She returned to her work as a survival instructor, teaching others the skills that had saved her life on that barren moon. When people asked her how she had defeated the champion, she always gave the same answer. I just did not quit. That is all any of us ever have to do. Just keep going one step at a time, and eventually you will get where you need to be. It was such a simple philosophy, and yet it captured everything that made humanity special, everything that made them dangerous, everything that made them impossible to defeat. They were stubborn. They were determined. They were human. And the universe would never forget it.